she had a friend who didn't want to support her business, and I'm like, I'm sorry, girl, you gotta cut that negative energy and that toxic energy out of your life, because if they can't even support your business and you ask them to write one review and they can't do it on your like Amazon store, like come on, like as any good friend, they will want you to succeed. And I'm like, if someone doesn't want to see you succeed and they're jealous, I'm like that. I won't question that friendship.
Welcome everyone back to the podcast. We have a special guest, which is Michelle Cheng. She graduated from UCLA in chemical engineering, and currently she is doing systems engineering for satellites, defense, and also because of her background and her family's background, entrepreneur, she started her own business called Omie Kombucha, which is Asian-inspired kombucha, which is organic and sustainable, which Michelle will talk more about it. And I wanted to ask you, Michelle, how is your day going so far?
Oh, thanks for the introduction, Peter. My day is going great. So excited to be here. I have never done a podcast before, so this is like quite a surreal experience.
No, and thank you for being on here as well, because I just seeing your background as well, like just hearing from graduating from UCLA, that's a big accomplishment as well.
Oh,
even being in engineering, but what surprised me was like she went into the kombucha business, and that kind of caught my eye. Like, what made you go from that transition to engineering to starting your own business?
Yeah, that's a good question. I never thought I would be selling kombucha as well, or building a brand around kombucha, but I mean, personally for me, my family has always been entrepreneurial. My dad, he was in the jewelry business, and then he also pivoted and started his own herbal medicine manufacturing business. So I feel like I have that entrepreneur spirit from my dad, and like him, I also pivoted too. So I went from engineering, which I still am working my full-time engineering job, but you know, on nights and weekends, when I have the time, I will do kombucha. And I think it really plays into part of like what I believe in, like my brand, because I believe in like a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
I believe in taking care of your body, you know, doing things to make yourself feel good and also be physically strong. And gut health is something that's like everyone needs to learn about gut health, because it's like the basis for everything. If you have a healthy gut, you feel good and your body just functions more properly, and you could eliminate waste better. And also a lot of the like precursors to serotonin is found within your gut, like your gut lining. So that's why they always say, oh, you feel it in your gut, because if you have good gut health, you also have good mental health. And
wow.
Yeah. So that's why I believe like kombucha is so magical, and also it's tasty as well. But you know, kombucha is a saturated market. Like if you go to Whole Foods or Sprouts, you see Health Aid, GT, like all the big hitters. And I thought, I was like, what can I do to stand out from the market? You know, with just things being more diverse these days, and also, you know, the Stop Asian Hate movement coming up. I was like, man, I really need to cater to like my Asian American community and do flavors that, you know, like me as an Asian American, I will like as well.
Right.
So a lot of the flavors are like Asian inspired. We have masala chai, because one of my best friends who also helped me with the business is Indian. So this is like a shout out to her culture. And also, personally for me, I grew up with Calpico, which is like a Japanese kind of mixed drink, yogurty drink. So I also have a Calpico flavor as well.
Dang, and you mentioning these different flavors, me being kind of like outside of the culture, is like, I'm kind of curious about these flavors. And even you kind of, like you said, pivoting into kombucha, I'm sure you had your challenges kind of coming into that. Because like you're mentioning, one of them is kind of like saturated, but it's like you also wanted to get the design. And then I'm thinking the name Omie is like, where did that come from?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely there's challenges all the time, but I think that's part of being an entrepreneur. It's they're fun. They challenge you, you grow and you improve, and don't be scared of like failing. Like I always tell people when they want to start something, it's like, don't be scared of failing, iterating, because it's gonna happen a lot. But how Omie came about was when I was first trying to like come up with a name for the business. I was like trying to think of so many different things, but a lot of things are either taken or already trademarked, or they just did not have a good ring to it. Yeah. At first, like my friend was helping me. She was like, oh, what about kombucha? Like CALM bucha, like calm, because when you drink it, you feel at peace and you feel good. And I'm like, oh, that's a good name, but that was already taken. So I was like, I want my brand to be like cute. Like I want my brand to be fun and vibrant, because I want when someone to drink the kombucha to feel like, you know, they're having a good time and they're doing something good for their body. So I was like, okay, Om is what people say in Sanskrit for peace, like O-H-M. But I'm like, Om is too like, you know, just like a little bit boring. So I was like, how do I like spice it up a little bit? So I started Omie, the E at the end.
Oh, Omie. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
so that's how it's got born. And now like for my kombucha brand, there are like little characters for each of the flavor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so the main character, his name is Omie the SCOBY. And it kind of rhymes, like Omie the SCOBY. It's like super catchy.
I love it. It's cute. It's like you get to have a personal touch into each of the bottles that you're making because there's a character behind that. And then it's and you feel like with that kind of like direction, you feel like people are going to be able to resonate with these characters?
Oh yeah, totally. Like that was the whole point, is to make a very personal brand. A brand where it's like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm drinking like kombucha from my best friend. You know, like I'm like making something especially for you. There's 3 flavors so far, so there's 3 characters. Omie the SCOBY is the main character. He's the original flavor, so we call him the OG. He's like the OG homie you can depend on. He has like glasses.
I love that.
And he has like a thumbs up like this. Like he's got your back no matter what. And that's what I want people to think about my kombucha. Like when they drink it, it's like, yo, I got your back. You know, I put your health and your wellness as my first priority when you drink my product. And then there's another flavor, masala chai, so that's the spicy one. Ooh. So that character is a little bit fiery, kind of has like kind of fiery stuff coming out of it, and a little bit sassy too. And then Calpico is sweet and tangy, so that character is like very cute and bubbly and just like happy. And
I know you're mentioning too, because you want to put like these characters on kind of like the branding of each bottle, and you're mentioning too kind of like a while ago how you had your obstacles too with having to kind of change the bottle as well, because you were trying to go more with the recycling and more of like the glass bottle, and then you had to pivot into like a different direction. What happened there with having to kind of switch the bottles?
Oh yeah, so these are like one of the many challenges I faced while like, you know, running the kombucha business, starting it up. So at first, I wanted glass bottles because when you drink something out of a glass, you just feel like, oh, it's high quality. Like I want that experience for, you know, my consumers. But I guess like over time, because of the vaccine rollout and like just the supply chain going crazy from COVID, it was getting harder and harder to procure glass. It was getting like more expensive and having more lead time.
Wow.
So I was just like, maybe I need to pivot now. So now I'm going into plastic, which is like, you know, I think it all happened for a reason, really, because like. If I were to use glass and ship glass, like it would just be way expensive, and also there's more liability, like it's easier to break. But now since like I'm starting up my online store on Shopify, pivoting to plastic will be much easier to ship and the handling of the logistics and stuff. So I think it came out in a perfect time. I mean, it's sad that the glass didn't work out, but that's what happens when you start a business. A lot of things don't work out and you just like keep iterating until it works.
And you know, that's what I love about it too, because you're still trying to pushing forward, and you didn't give up on that. I'm sure that you had your moment where you had to pause to kind of recollect yourself and get this done. But then even you going to Shopify, what made you want to go in that direction of a website to sell your merchandise?
Oh yeah, so there was a lot of pivoting with the Shopify website.
Oh, there was that one too.
Yeah. Like you're always iterating as an entrepreneur, so that's why I always tell people like don't be scared of failing and don't be scared of trying like a bunch of things. So I hired actually a design team to help me with my website.
Very cool.
Yeah, because I'm like, I know I have a vision, but it's gonna be hard for me to implement it. So I'm like, okay, I want to like find a design team that really understands like my brand, who I am, and my vision, and then see if they could bring it to life. And they did. Like my they're called Master Design Blog, and they're a group of very talented designers and like just super like communicative and super in tune with what I wanted. And at first they wanted to do it on Webflow. Webflow was like the platform they were used to using because a lot of UX and UI designers use Webflow, and it's very versatile and it's very like good, like it looks very good like design wise, but a lot of the functionalities for e-commerce store was lacking. Like for instance, they didn't support like customer login, and if I wanted to do like a customer login, I had to create my own database with Firebase and on Google, and I'm like, wait, no, I'm not a tech company. Like I have to ask myself and like pause, be like, am I a tech company? I'm not a tech company. I'm trying to open up an e-commerce store so I could sell kombucha. I don't want to waste the time to build out a database of customers and also have to manage that database and deal with the security of that. So that's when it was like probably a few weeks into the project. I told my design team, I was like, I'm so sorry you started building all the framework in Webflow, but I think we need to pivot to Shopify because Shopify had all those like functions like built in natively, and those are very simple things. Like as a customer, when you're using a website, of course you want to be able to log in and look at your past orders. That's just something very basic.
Right.
So I was like, I'm sorry guys, but we need to pivot and go to Shopify now. So I mean, thanks to them, they're like superstars. They like got all my stuff from Webflow and like transferred it to Shopify, and it worked out really well.
And I love that you actually went and seeked out to like have a team and kind of go out for and get them, because most people kind of want to do everything themselves. And you also have the humility to be like, you know what, I don't think we're going to go in the direction of being like, you said, like a database, because I can see what you're trying to do is like have the base to have them sign up, maybe get discounts or at least build that up, that customer base. But then you realize, let me just put out my items first on Shopify and then have sales through that and maybe eventually build that up. Because it seems like that's what was happening originally, correct?
Oh, well, like the thing with the database is like I will have to build that like all myself. Like I have to build all the customer functions. And I'm like, I don't want to build those things. I just want Shopify to take care of it. And my main, job, like my main goal for the company is to put my products out there and to have a sales channel. And all the like managing the sales channel, like the customer login and the signups and stuff shouldn't be what I have to worry about actually.
And that's interesting too, because what do you feel like would be your primary kind of like customer base that's going to be going to your kombucha business to purchase them? Because you did mention though that they're going to be Asian-based flavors, but how would you attract other people that are outside of the culture?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a great question. Like because kombucha is so saturated, but at the same time, the kombucha like tangible, the total market is very big because basically anyone who's living and who has a mouth and likes like bubbly drinks will want to drink kombucha, right? So there's a lot of people you can market to. But I realized that I kind of want to, instead of going wide, narrow, I want to start narrow and then go wide. So I want to first like target a very specific demographic,
right? And
I want to target first Asian Americans. Someone like preferably like like middle class to upper middle class income, because definitely you need some money to buy kombucha. It's like one of those like health luxury items,
right? And
also definitely like millennials and Gen Zs, they tend to be more onto like the health kick and the health trend. But it doesn't mean like younger people or older people can't drink it. And also definitely someone who has an Asian American background or someone who likes Asian culture. They will probably be interested in trying it as well. So I think because there's like so many Asian Americans in the US, I mean, there's like 20 million Asian Americans in the US. So if I could sell a kombucha bottle to each Asian American every single year, I think I would be doing pretty well for myself.
That's crazy. And I love that it was well thought out of like who you're going to sell it to. And then I'm just thinking like on the side as well, like you're doing your engineering, you're doing the kombucha business. How do you balance those two things out with even with your personal life? Like how do you manage all of that? Yeah,
I mean, that's a great question as well. Like, this is how I see life. Like, life is like a stovetop. So there's like 4 burners. Each of the burner is like, one burner is maybe for work, one burner is maybe for friends, one burner is maybe for your side hustle, your side passion, and another burner might be, I don't know, for your spiritual life or whatever. And like, you can't turn all 4 burners on at the same time. There's no way you're gonna kill your stove. But there's some times where like in one phase of your life, okay, work is probably gonna burn at a faster rate, or maybe sometimes there's like where like your spiritual life will burn at a faster rate as compared to work, so I think like saying to have a balanced life is sometimes overrated, because when you want to excel at anything, you might not be balanced for a period of time, but that's okay, because time will pass. And sometimes when you really have to like get like the business off the ground, like when I did for kombucha, like it was more like working a lot on the weekdays nights and weekends, but that was fine. It was for a short period of time. So now I have more of a system. So as you like work more on your side business or hustle, you get more of a system. And then when you follow your system, things get easier. You tend to work smarter instead of working harder and longer hours.
I love that, because that was a great analogy and answer as well, because I was thinking, most people, they want to chase their dreams, they want to do what they want to do, and you can correct me too on it. It's like, you're right. You're gonna make a sacrifice now, and you're gonna have to turn on one of the knobs to really heat it up.
Yeah.
But that's the sacrifice you have to make if you're gonna start your own project. And I can understand what you mean by that. Like for me, anyways, doing the podcast, some things have to go, some days have to go. But I'm okay with that because that's the sacrifice I'm making to hopefully see this continue to grow. Kind of like what you're doing with Kombucha Business. Like you said, it's overrated. But sometimes, like you said, one thing's going to be turned on more on the stove, other thing's going to be a little bit lowered, but that's okay. And that's kind of like normal because you want to get to your goals. One thing's going to have to be higher than the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that was like totally interesting that you brought that up. And I think it's great advice for people to be like, hey, if you really want something, then you have to put in the time and you're going to have to put in the effort versus just like, there's no such thing as like you said, all 4 levels are going to be on at the same time. I think when you said that, I was like, yeah, that is true. Like it's almost an expectation, like it has to be perfect. It's not going to happen. Like you're dreaming if you think that's the case.
Oh yeah, definitely not. And it doesn't have to be perfect, you know. You don't have to. I realized really early on working and also like starting up my business, like as long as it's like 80% good, it's good enough. And then you could just move on. I'm just saying because my website is like not perfect, you know. There's still some functionalities that are like missing, but for the most part, it's functional and it looks good. So I will give it a B, and it's good enough where people can order stuff and log in and like check what they ordered. So I'm like, this is good enough. Just get it out the door.
And that's interesting. Like for you, when you were starting your kombucha business and having all these challenges and difficulties, what do you think is something that if you could relate to someone like that would want to give up on the idea because there's just so many challenges to it, like what would you think is something that you would help someone that is like, I want to kind of give up on this idea of whatever product they're trying to make or sell or website, to turn them around and say, hey, don't give up, just keep pursuing this, kind of like what you're doing. Kind of like advice.
Yeah, that's a really profound question, which is good, you know. I you know, like I always like play this thing within my head. I'm just like, okay, if I give up now, what will happen? You know, like for me personally, if I decide to give up kombucha, I'm just like, okay, my life will be the same. It will just be like I'll be working on my engineering job maybe for the next 40 years of my life, which to me is personally sounds kind of depressing. Like not that I hate my job, but I'm just like, would I really want to be stuck there for the next 40 years of my life? But then when I like flip that script, I'm thinking like, what are the possibilities that could happen, you know? Yeah, sure, there would be challenges, but there's a possibility that it could get big. There's the possibility that, you know, I will have like a great team working for me, and that's what I always wanted to do too. Like part of building a business is also building a culture and building a brand. And I was like, if I could have a great team and build that team culture where it's inclusive, people can be creative and can express their ideas while we're making money and selling a great product that helps others, like I feel like that's the ultimate dream.
And I love that because it already sounds like you have the things that's going to keep pushing and motivating you is that vision. Like you said, you want to see that plan happen. And like you said, you're like, okay, yeah, you can continue to be a successful engineer, what you're doing now. But like, it's like one of those what ifs, like what if I didn't chase this, then you're going to be stuck in one area and you have no one to blame but yourself for not taking that risk. And that's so interesting to me because most people don't want to kind of take that jump. And I feel like it's the fear of like, what if I kind of look a certain way or people aren't going to support me that I think would because I'm trying to start this brand. And that's like everything else. Like you're going to have to kind of go rolling with the punches. And kind of like thinking of it too, I know your parents had an entrepreneurial background. How much of their qualities and character kind of rubbed off on you to kind of like, I'm going to go and do my kombucha business? Like how much of that was, you know, projected onto you?
Yeah, I think a good amount. Like, I mean, my parents, they have like their good attributes, and like I really admire them for that. And I hope that those have rubbed off onto me because you know, because you kind of like when you grow up with your parents and they raise you, you kind of start kind of acting like them in some certain ways. So I was like, oh man, I really hope that like my dad, who is the entrepreneur of the family, super go-getter, you know, just super like what I say, like a leader. Like he is a really good leader. He like does things fast and does them quick and is very decisive, which I think is what an entrepreneur needs as well. But sometimes my dad could be a little bit disorganized. So my
Yeah.
mom, who balances him out, my mom is not as business savvy as my dad and not as strong of a leader. My mom's more soft-spoken and introverted, but my mom is definitely the meticulous one. She's the organized one. She's very good at like numbers and accounting because she's so meticulous and so detail-oriented. So that's what I admire about my mom, and I hope I have gotten those traits from her too. Because you need both in a business. Like, yes, you need one person who's a super go-getter, extroverted, gets new like leads and brings a lot of new sales into the business, but you also need a person who's like really good at following processes, developing system, and is detail-oriented.
Wow. And just you mentioning those two sides, I love that. Like you're saying your father's more of the go-getter, mom's like just, it's the balance of where they're managing two things.
Yeah.
And do you feel like you have that, what do you feel like you're more on the side of the go-getter or more on the meticulous side?
I definitely think I have more of my dad's personality because I know this podcast is the introvert world, and like I love my introverts out there. Yeah. Like I have a lot of introverted friends. My boyfriend is introverted, but I'm definitely an extrovert. And my dad is too. My dad's super extroverted. So I feel like I have more of his personality on that part. But what I appreciate about like engineering and just going through UCLA and like also working on my engineering job is it taught me how to be very detail oriented and meticulous. And how to have good systems because, good engineers, I was taught this, good engineers are not because they are smart, it's because they have good systems and they learn to work smarter, so they make their jobs easier. So I hope to have, to have more of my mom's side because I think naturally my personality is just more extroverted and more like quick and decisive as opposed to being detail oriented.
I see you. Like, your strengths are more on that side. And it's kind of speaking on the introvert-extrovert side of it. Let's say someone that is introverted who has to, let's say like you're in the shoes of an introvert and you're familiar with this one that has like a little lower social barrier than most.
Yeah.
How should they go about networking with people and then also balancing out their personal life? Because it's easy to go out and like, go out and network, but then there's also like you need the moment to recharge and collect yourself and balance both of those sides.
Yeah, totally. I think rest is definitely important. Like, having deep, meaningful rest. Not like rest where you're like scrolling on your phone and like, I don't know, like
brain farts.
or like just mindlessly binging Netflix. But rest that where it's like, if you're an introvert, like you need to do things that really recharge you, like whether being out in nature, doing hikes by yourself, or reading a book. I don't know, cooking. Some people get recharged from cooking or baking, or like some type of like sport they like to do. Yeah, definitely like set yourself your time on the weekends or maybe even like 30 minutes after the workday to really recharge and do that. Because I mean, definitely everyone feels burnout and burnout is very real.
Right.
And yeah, the burnout culture is so strong in the US. I feel like we glorize burnout, which is like a bad thing,
Right.
Yeah, I'm all about working hard, but also about like taking care of your body and your health.
And even speaking on that, how do you go about taking care of your own mental health with all the things that you do right now? Because it's already three things: the personal, the kombucha, and then doing the engineering as well.
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Mental health is like, it's so complicated and complex, and everyone has a different way of taking care of themselves. I mean, personally for me, a lot of my mental health is like sticking to my physical health and like taking care of my physical health, because I realize if I work out consistently and I eat right and I take care of my gut health, then my mentality is actually like way improved and my mood is a lot better. There are some days where I realize I don't work out for 3 days in a row and I'm just like, why do I feel so like down and icky? Like I feel so unmotivated. And then I'm like, no, I need to go hit the gym and do a workout session after an hour of sweating and huffing and panting. Although I feel like I'm dying physically, but mentally I feel so much better. I feel like clear in my head and I just feel like, oh yeah, all the endorphins are rushing through and now I feel like I'm motivated to do other things.
And that's interesting. Yeah, it's like there is that part like you were saying that you had to go out and work out, and there's like a bit of that productivity of when you kind of stop doing something, it's easy to go and be kind of like, I guess I like to say like being a sloth, but you're breaking that breaking that lazy momentum, because it's easy to be inconsistent. I don't know what it is, it's far easier to be inconsistent than it is consistent on working hard or going to the gym like yourself. And so like I think for people to understand kind of like the advice you were giving as well is like, hey, find something that's going to continue to help you feel good about yourself. Like you mentioned the gut health, hey, maybe add a kombucha, maybe your own kombucha in there that's going to help take care of that, but also have other balances of working out, because I think like you said, the physical health plays a role into the mental, and a lot of people kind of forget about that because it's not taught as much here in this culture. But at least now, like you were saying, the direction, like the Gen Z, the millennials, earlier in the podcast, we're shifting in that direction. And that's where you come in with the kombucha business. And that's your kind of start rolling it out. It kind of made me wonder as well, like, what are the plans for you with kind of like by 2022? Where do you see this kombucha business going?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question too. I definitely, by 2022, it will be amazing at the end of 2022 where like I'm generating so much sales that the kombucha becomes like a 6-figure business. And I could like also have a co-manufacturing plant. Because right now I make everything by myself, which is like, you know, I love making kombucha, but as you grow, it becomes unsustainable to make it by yourself. And it's actually better and more consistent to do it in a manufacturing plant. And that way I could concentrate on what I love, which is branding, you know, networking, connecting with people and building the company culture and like coming up with new products. Because that's truly what I love to do. I mean, the production is cool and all, and like making kombucha is fun sometimes, but what I love is like building the brand. So by the end of 2022, if I could find like a great co-manufacturing partnership and also could like have a 6-figure business where I could walk away from my engineering job, that would be amazing.
And that's something to look forward to. And that's the thing as well you're mentioning, like, because I was just mentioning, like, all right, she's doing the networking and then kind of going out there to make those connections and maybe find someone to do the co. And so I was thinking with COVID-19 happening and kind of things shutting down, how much has that slowed you down on the networking side of it with things not opening up as much?
Yeah, I was really bummed that, like, you know, of course the lockdown happened, like not as many people are meeting up, because every year in Long Beach actually there's a big kombucha convention. It's called Kombucha Con. It's like the biggest kombucha
Kombucha Con?
Yeah, it's the biggest kombucha conference. It always happen, I think it's October or something. Unfortunately it's not happening again this year, which I'm kind of bummed out, just because of everything that's happening, but I realized people in the kombucha industry are actually super nice and super friendly. Like I have made a lot of connections just cold calling, cold emailing people, and then we'll hop over the phone and I'll talk to them for 30 minutes or so. I think people in kombucha are just super friendly and willing to help, and I have made like great connections like in Canada. Like there's this kombucha consultant business.
Canada, crazy. There's
this kombucha consulting business, and like the person I met there, he's just like, you know, my job is to just meet with people like you who want to start their kombucha brand, and me telling them that they could do it and they could pursue their dreams. And I was just like, wow, that is such a great job. Like,
and that's awesome. The fact that you're mentioning Kombucha Con, I thought it was funny because I was like, there's a convention for that, but that's how I know it's that big of a thing with kombucha. And it's great that you mentioned all of that as well. For like someone that is, like, say, more on the low social battery, what would you recommend for like an introvert to go ahead and start making those calls? Because I know you have the energy and you want to connect with people, and that's more natural for you. What strategy would you have for someone that's like, let's say myself being introverted, I'm like, you know what, I can probably give 2 hours of like my social battery to make these calls, and then I'm gonna have to go away from the world kind of thing to kind of recharge. What would you advise me in that position to, like, because I don't know how often you make these calls either. If you can give more clarity on that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess like one is to schedule, you know, pencil in some time every day to like cold call or cold email people. Like it doesn't have to be that long of a time.
Right.
Like, you know, as an introvert, maybe you only have like 15 minutes or half an hour to do that, but that's better than nothing. And if you do it every day consistently, like by the end of the day, by the end of the week, if you did it consistently, you might have reached out to like 15 people already.
Crazy.
Yeah, because if you do 2 or 3 a day, it doesn't seem like a lot, but by the end of the week on Sunday, you spent like, you know, only 15 minutes each day and you have reached out to so many people. And also I realized that like networking, you know, other people also are busy. So other people can't be on the call with you for hours at a time. And actually you could get a lot done within half an hour. Like in the corporate world, I don't know why we always have hour-long meetings. Because honestly, after 30 minutes, you just lose people. So, you know, if you come prepared with questions beforehand and you know what's the purpose of the meeting, you can actually just get it done within 30 minutes and you can make a great new friend. So 30 minutes is not too bad.
And I love what you said. The best part that stood out to me was like, it doesn't hurt just to try and do it, you know, because most people don't even want to make that start. And I think it is great because even like, say, like you're saying, you make strategic calls and then you have a certain time, as long as you're able to gain that experience, because I'm sure you gained a lot of experience talking to different people over the phone, but you just had to initiate it and not be afraid to kind of put yourself out there. And and you just barely starting out, I'm sure that was valuable information. And then even thank you for sharing that as well, like scheduling that time. Most people, I don't even know if they're starting to make those steps, because I think that was great that you shared, because anyone in a different industry should be able to like Google or look them up and be like, let me make these calls to people. No matter if you're in a taco truck business or something like that, you can at least make that effort to start researching and then making those calls, versus like, oh, I'm just gonna go ahead and give up, or I don't know anyone, so I'm just not gonna really put myself out there like that.
Yeah.
And I was thinking as well, as like, as you're doing the kombucha business, do you have any new flavors that you might possibly be coming out with? Because you mentioned 3 so far.
Yeah, totally. I have experimented with flavors that were like really bad recently, unfortunately. So I need to come up with new ideas.
Yeah.
Like I wanted to do banana milk.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's in Korean culture. They drink a lot of banana milk, and it's super tasty. If you ever get to go to a Korean market and buy some, it comes in these little cartons, like milk cartons almost. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could do a kombucha flavored banana milk. That would be amazing. And then I like tried it, and I was like, oh gosh, this is the nastiest thing I ever drank. Pour it down the drain. I'm like, I don't want anyone to drink this. But yeah, I would love to do a brown sugar ginger flavor in the future.
Ooh, okay.
Because like growing up Chinese culture, like a lot of times, like for women, what's good for women's health is brown sugar and ginger, like in a hot tea form. But I want to put it in kombucha form, because also like ginger is super tasty to me.
And I was kind of curious what the first one, the banana milk kombucha, was it because it's the banana milk easier just to drink because it's smoother, or is it because the kombucha was too bitter? I'm trying to curious.
Because banana milk is like, it's a milk product, so it's milky. So, and then kombucha is sour. So you're mixing dairy with sour, so it tastes like you're drinking like rotting milk, you know?
Oh, no. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then you would have to change the name to rotting milk kombucha, right? No, we don't want that. We don't want that.
No.
And then the other one you're doing as well, that's a interesting take on it as well. So you're saying you're kind of like seeing if you want to like test that out, right?
Yeah, the brown sugar and ginger. And that's like not too difficult to make as well. And also, I really want to do a flavor with yuzu, mainly salted yuzu, because in Japanese culture, a lot of people would eat salted yuzu, will put it in like dressings and other flavors. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a pretty interesting. And yuzu is like light and lemony and citrusy.
And I love what you're doing. Honestly, when I'm like hearing you share all these different ideas from different cultures, because you're not just taking specifically for like say Korean, Japanese, or even Chinese. You're doing all the Asian cultures, and like you mentioned earlier, your friend that was from India. I mean, that's amazing, because now people like myself who maybe aren't too familiar with the different popular drinks from different cultures, now you're able to share it with me, and I'm able to know like, oh wow, this is something that's popular from here. And I'm sure that you've done it with your branding, where I'm sure you talk about each of the flavors and where the background comes from. I don't know if you thought about that idea. And they kind of, for me, someone who doesn't know about it, I'm like, oh, this is where originates from, and this is why it's Asian inspired. Because that would make my curiosity from a different culture be like, oh, that's cool. I'm drinking something that's popular from Korea, someone from Japan. That's so awesome, So I think that's, for me anyways, that's why I was like really happy to hear that, because I'm like, oh, I'm learning something while what I'm drinking as well. And you know how it is. You're like, oh, this is from here, or this is from so-and-so. You want to feel cool and all that. But that's amazing that you're doing that. And I wanted to ask you, as we're nearing the end of the podcast, like what is something that helps you be mentally strong in a very saturated business that's like super competitive?
Mental strength is definitely like something that I aspire to have. Like when I'm not sure if you've done manifestation exercises where it's like, who do you want to manifest to be? Who do you envision yourself to be when you're in your 30s? And honestly, what I envision myself to be in my 30s is like someone who's like mentally strong, who has emotional intelligence, and could like weather the storm and just, be like a solid rock, a foundation, no matter what. And like,
I love that.
Yeah, to be mentally strong, oh man, it's so hard. Sometimes I do feel like I want to break down and just cry and be like, screw everything, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely my faith, my belief in God. That definitely helps a lot, knowing that it's all part of his plan and everything will work out for his good. That really humbles me. And also just having a good support network as well, like having friends and family who I could talk to. That really helps. And also just like refocusing your energy, like for me being like having my habits, working out consistently, eating right consistently, like going on hikes that will help me get outdoors and recharge my battery. So, yeah.
And there was a part that stood out to me too, like you were saying, having good supportive friends. And everything else you're mentioning too, how you recharge. I think what stood out to me is like having the supportive friends is very important in whatever you start, because I'm sure there's moments where you want to just talk to somebody or get advice or find comfort as well in what you're doing. And there's nothing that feels better than to have someone in like your circle telling you you're doing a great job, or I see you being successful in this. Because I feel like most people that start a business or anything they're doing is like you need that support. And I feel like this is just more of a personal opinion of where it's coming from, but I think people need that to know like, hey, you need to have a close circle of people that are going to be just encouragement, but also tell you the truth. Obviously, if it, like something like, hey, maybe you should try something different or this or that, but only when they see that it's the right moment. But I think when you brought that up, it stood out to me because most people they don't have that, or they don't know how to pick the right people to be really close to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's unfortunately it's challenging for some people to find good support networks. Like I'm lucky that I have like great friends, and I have friends who are very ambitious and entrepreneurial as well. I remember I have this girlfriend too. She has her own e-commerce business on Amazon, FBA. But she had a friend who didn't want to support her business, and I'm like, I'm sorry, girl, you gotta cut that negative energy and that toxic energy out of your life, because if they can't even support your business and you ask them to write one review and they can't do it on your like Amazon store, like come on, like as any good friend, they will want you to succeed. And I'm like, if someone doesn't want to see you succeed and they're jealous, I'm like that. I will question that friendship.
That word you said, jealous, like that's definitely what it can be.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like it's so weird that when you start something, people don't want to immediately just support you, and that's what threw me off as well. But that's kind of like what comes with the territory, is because they're used to seeing you, for example, like, oh, Michelle the engineering, but now they're seeing her do something different. They're like, oh, I don't know if I want to see her be more successful. It's like a weird thing, but you want people to be better. Like that's how the mentality should be. Like, yeah, I definitely would want Michelle to have the #1 kombucha business in the world. Like, why wouldn't you want that for someone else? Because hopefully you would want someone to say the same thing about you and whatever you do to be #1. But it's not. It's just people don't have that kind of heart or that kind of mind. And like you said, if they're not supporting you, then you got to be a pair of scissors and start cutting them out. Like it's just not. No, we don't need that type of thing. But thank you for sharing that and keeping it real as well, because definitely that's what we need in the podcast. And for people listening, Michelle has dropped a lot of great information and tips, and just like her entrepreneurial background is great as well. And as we are nearing the end, was there anything that you wanted to share about? Anything you wanted to promote with your website, or anything else going on for your social media to promote Omie? Is that correct that I'm saying that, Omie?
Yeah.
Because I was saying it wrong in the beginning, but thank you for being so humble and like correcting in a nice way. But about Omie, if there's anything you wanted to share about that, this is probably the best time to share about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. So the website is live now. It's www.omiekombucha.com. So go check it out. I have all my products there. You can also email me there as well if you want to get in contact with me. I'm on social media as well. My business is Omie the Scobie handle on all Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Twitter, everything. So
you have a Discord?
Yeah, I have a Discord.
Wow. And is the Discord just for Omie the Scobie, or is it for Michelle Cheng?
It's also for me as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm like across all social media platforms, but mainly definitely Instagram, Facebook, and the website.
Neat. Thank you so much for sharing all of that, guys. Check it out. I'll also put on the description on YouTube as well as even on Spotify all the information you're sharing about where to find your products and your website. And guys, please check it out and even try to grab some of the flavors as she starts releasing them, and even new ingredients that she's testing out. But I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast, and that'll be wrapping up for the show.
Oh yeah, thank you for having me, Peter. I really hope that this podcast takes off, and a lot of introverts out there will really like enjoy this and like get great information from this.